Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's special assembly.
Before we start, we would like to acknowledge the Darug people, the traditional owners and custodians of this land which this assembly is taking place. I acknowledge too elders past and present and the Aboriginal people here today. In doing so, I recognise my personal obligation to work towards the achievement of justice, human rights and reconciliation with Australian Aboriginal peoples.
Please welcome Judith, Grace, and Anne to lead us in prayer. As we gather today, we remind ourselves that we are always in the presence of God. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. Loving God, we pray in gratitude for the opportunity we have this afternoon to hear from ex-Bennies students. We ask that our hearts be open to listening to their experience and that we may take what we learn from them into our own lives. As we are in the middle weeks of this term in the year of hospitality, we ask the Holy Spirit to be with us and to provide us with the strength to do the best we can in all areas of school life.
We pray that we may be patient with our friends and willing to open our hearts to new people. Lord, we also pray for those who go without this winter season, that they may find warmth, food, and comfort. Bless those that strive to make the world a better place for those who are less fortunate, and help us all to seek out the face of Christ in those we meet. Saint Benedict, pray for us. Saint Mary MacKillop of the Cross,
Pray for us.
Amen. In the name of the Father, Son.
Thanks, Judith, Grace, and Anne. Now, Jamie, Alana, and I will address the college.
The year is 2030. I sit nervously in a grand hall, staring up at the huge emblem resembling a map of the world above me. A woman at a marble lectern addresses the room, which is filled with hundreds of important-looking people seated at long benches, all the leaders of the world gathered together. The woman thanks them all for coming to this highly exclusive and very important event and introduces the guest speaker, Mrs. Parker. As I stand, my husband Luke gives my arm a rub. "You can do this, Jane," he says. "You won the Nobel Peace Prize yesterday. You won the Oscars for Best Actress, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Original Song, and Best Original Score the day before that. You can do anything." I smile at him. He always knows what to say. I make my way towards the marble lectern and begin what will be later known as the greatest, most inspiring, and world-changing speech in the history of human existence.
To me, my future is very clear. When I go to England next year, I will meet my husband, who also happens to be Prince Harry's best friend. And what a coincidence, because of this, Meghan Markle and I become best friends as well. My husband and I will live next door to our besties in Kensington Palace. I've always wanted to live on a property with horses. I was the crazy horse girl who galloped around the playground. During the day, I will be out fighting crimes in the police force like Jake Peralta, doing my best to make a difference in the world. Who knows, I might even be a lawyer like Harvey Specter. Overnight, I'll have the privilege of coming home to my husband, taking care of our big family. I want 8 kids. I've already started my list of names.
When Jamie asked me to think about my future, a diverse array of images popped in and out of my mind. The one I liked the best was me zooming along a coastal highway, heading for my Hamptons-inspired beach house in my red Mustang convertible, radio blaring, and my boyfriend's arm draped over my shoulder. I can't quite decide if he's Noah from the Kissing Booth, Liam Hemsworth, KJ Appa, or Zac Efron. But the real question is, how will I become this future me? And the answer to that is, I'm not quite sure. I've never been someone with a clear or detailed life plan who knows exactly what I want to do after I leave MSB later this year. But what I do know is where that I want to go to uni, get a degree of some sort, and hopefully work in a field that I'm passionate about and where I can really make a difference. I see myself surrounded by people who make me happy and in a career that I love. So, if you're like me and you can't quite imagine where you'll be in 10 or 20 years from now, that's okay. I found that often the best things in life are the things we don't plan for, the people we meet completely by accident who become very important to us, the skills or new passions that we discover when we say yes to an opportunity purely because it sounds like fun. Although my future isn't all planned out, I'm sure that it'll work out. I'm excited to explore new paths and meet new people. The world is truly my oyster, and as a Benny's girl, with the values and lessons that I have learned during my time here, I can achieve anything I put my mind to, and so can you.
As much as I love the Royals and would absolutely love to be one, what is most important is in the future I am happy. Sometimes being happy is harder than it sounds. We're often taught that success involves wealth and fame, being the best at what we do and being the most beautiful. To me, this is the way of thinking which is just depressing. My definition of success is probably different to yours. And if we measure ourselves based on one of our fixed notions of success, we set ourselves up to be very unhappy. I want to live a life that I am proud of and to be successful by my own terms and not someone else's. I hope that if I was ever invited back for the Beyond Bennies assembly, I would be able to sit on stage completely happy with my life and content to be Gemma Gallagher, regardless of what career or connection to Prince Harry I might have.
The best way to predict your future is to create it. That's a direct quote from Abraham Lincoln, and it's as true in our time as it was in his. The dreams that I have of speaking at the United Nations, working in human rights, scoring films, traveling the world, none of these can happen unless I put in the effort and time that it takes to make them a reality. It's going to involve taking every opportunity and, when none exist, working hard to create opportunities for myself. It's going to involve putting my values into action, continuing to grow in love and care for others and myself. It won't be easy, but I'm determined that in the future, regardless of our relationship status, I'll be kicking goals, just like Luke Parker. I encourage you today, as you listen to our guest speakers, to consider what your future looks like. What do you define as success? What are your goals? Is it a future that you are happy with and proud of? With that in mind, it is my pleasure to welcome to the lectern Communications Captains Sarah Asaf and Kathleen Notterhammer Projo to begin our Beyond Bennies assembly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Kathleen, and we're your communications captains. Today, we'd like to welcome you all to the annual Beyond Bennies Assembly.
Let's start by explaining what the Beyond Bennies Assembly is. Beyond the infamous gum tree and beyond the red brick wall lies a scary future filled with job interviews, career options, and social interactions.
For year 11s and 12s in particular, this future may be approaching faster than you'd have expected it to. We've already heard from Jamie, Alana, and Gemma and their very realistic perceptions of their future. To help you all consider your own futures, we have invited some ex-Benny students to share their experiences of life after high school. We are very excited to introduce our guests to you today.
Ashley Campbell graduated in 2005 and recently worked as a venue operations manager for the 2018 Gold Coast Commonwealth Games. Ashley has also worked for the Football Federation Australia and as a result has worked with teams such as Manchester United. Furthermore, Ashley has created a program to cater for elite wheelchair athletes and runners, as well as worked for professional surfer Sally Fitzgibbons. Most recently, she has also managed the Health, Sport and Wellness program at ACU.
Emma Pratt graduated in 2004 and is now a child and adolescent child psychologist. She has worked in rural New South Wales with Indigenous children and was a tutor in the psychology department at Sydney University. She has recently finished volunteering for the Cerebral Palsy Alliance. She currently works as a part-time school psychologist and in private practice.
Laurie Keller graduated in 2007 and currently works at Sydney Sea Life Aquarium as a penguin trainer. In the past, she has also worked at Wildlife Sydney Zoo and was a field assistant in studying tropical birds in Queensland. She has not only worked in Australia, but has also worked in New Zealand with the endangered kiwi bird.
We would also like to extend a warm welcome to Melanie Drayton, the president of MSBSA, and thank the MSBSA committee for supporting this event. All right, so
We'd like to
head
invite
over?
our guests.
to the stage. Okay.
First, I think it would be a good idea to get to know each other a bit better. We have a few questions for each of you. How well do you think you can remember Bennies? So we'll start with Laurie. Okay, so what year did you graduate?
2007, so a long time ago.
What colour house were you in?
I was in green, Moretsu.
Same. So am I, so always good. Name one of the school's values.
That would be stewardship.
Science or English?
Science.
What colour house won the Athletics Carnival when you were in year 12?
I want to say Moretsu because we won a lot of, particularly the swimming carnival.
We're really good, so obviously
Yeah.
we won it then. What was your homeroom teacher's name?
I think it was Mrs. Duncan. I had a couple, so is that? Do you have the answer?
I don't have the answer to that, but we're
Let's just
trusting
say-
your memory.
Okay, so next we'll go with Ashley. So Ashley, what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2005, so I'm a little bit older than Laurie.
And what colour house were you in?
I was also in Moretsu, and I was vice and Moretsu house captain.
Awesome. Okay, and what was your favourite thing at the canteen?
Probably pizza pockets if they still have
Pizza
them.
pockets, absolutely. Name one of your school values.
Packs.
Pax, yep. And what teacher did you have for year 7 English?
I think it was Mrs. Phillips.
Phillips. Winter or summer uniform?
I'm not sure. I guess this summer.
Yep, I would 100% agree with summer. Yep.
Okay, Emma, what year did you graduate?
2004, so I'm the old and wise person here today.
What colour house were you in?
Monte Casino. Yeah.
Name one of the school values.
Laurie stole mine, stewardship. Hospitality. Yeah.
Name a teacher from the science department.
Mr. Hoogan Boom.
Yes.
Literally, yes.
Athletics carnival or swimming carnival?
Athletics? Yeah.
And then the student or teacher
Teacher.
talent quest.
Teacher. All the
Teacher.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teacher talent quest.
We got one final question for Laurie. Okay. So what do you call a penguin in Australia?
I have no idea.
Lost.
Real knee slapper. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. And finally, could you please give us a small summary on your current career?
Okay, well, I'm currently a penguin trainer at Sea Life Sydney Aquarium. And before getting to where I was, I studied Bachelor of Science in Biodiversity and Conservation at Macquarie Uni. About a year later, I worked at Wildlife Sydney Zoo as an education officer, so talking to people about conservation and animals. And then shortly after that, did some research, did some field work, worked with data, that sort of thing, all that technical stuff. And then I worked overseas in New Zealand on a national program raising endangered kiwi, which was a lot of fun. But I had to come back to Australia because there's a lot of fun here, and Sydney's the best city in the world. So here I am.
All right. That sounds awesome. Thank you. Ashley, could you give us a summary, please?
Yeah, sure. So when I left school, I went over to the US and had a gap year. So I worked for CCUSA. Then I came back and studied at UTS, did a Bachelor of Business at UTS. I then went on and worked at Boss About, which is part of Kentucky. Worked at the Football Federation of Australia, so I was there for quite a few years. Then went on to Fairfax Events. I've had quite a few few jobs. Fairfax Events working on the fun runs and swims that we do around Australia. So the City to Surf, I'm sure some of you guys have probably done that before. Then worked for Sally Fitzgibbons, professional surfer, the Commonwealth Games, which I just got back from, and I've just started a job at Australian Catholic Uni looking after sport, health and wellness for ACT New South Wales. Yeah, a few jobs.
And Emma?
Okay, so when I left school, I went straight into study and I did my 4 years of undergraduate psychology study. And then I had to go on and do my master's, but I couldn't stand doing any more study. So I threw myself into working as a school psychologist. I worked as a school psychologist out in Western Sydney, so your Mount Druitt, St Mary's. Then I went up to Wyong, and then I took myself out rural. So I was working out 12 hours from nowhere in Indigenous communities there. I also got to see school life from a different angle. So I worked with a lady who came and did work with staff to make the leadership structures stronger. I also have eventually went back and I worked up the courage to go back and do my clinical psychology masters. And while I was doing that, I worked for Cerebral Palsy Alliance, and I really got exposed to, I guess, the world of disability. And I'm sure I'm leaving out some other stuff. Worked at a university as a tutor as well. Work in private practice, and I am just about to launch my own psychology practice as well. And we just got a therapy dog, so we're really excited.
Oh, that's really exciting.
Could you tell us what type of dog you
It's
just
a
got?
cavoodle called Basil.
That's really sweet. Okay. I suppose we'll move on to the questions. So I think a main concern for senior students is being unsure of what they want to do in the future. So as Alana said previously, it's quite hard to imagine where we'll be in 10 or 20 years from now. So did you all have an idea of what you wanted to study or pursue in high school?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to work in science, so I feel I was pretty lucky that I had a bit of an idea. Obviously, penguin trainer was not that clear an occupation that I thought I would get, but I figured out. Well, I hoped that I would figure out what career path I would get to once I went to university. So picking a degree was also a challenge once I got to year 12. But yeah, science was always my goal.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ashley?
Definitely not. So, yeah, I had no idea what I was going to do when I was leaving year 12, hence the gap year. I was lucky enough to do quite well with my ATAR mark, so I did get into a degree at UTS and then went over to the States, had a gap year over there, did a bit of travel, and then came back and started that degree. Going back, if I was to go back 10 years now, 12 years now, when I started that degree, I probably would have gone into something different, but I have made my way into the career that I really like and enjoy going to and doing every day. So, you definitely don't have to go straight into that career straight away when you leave school.
Yeah, so I knew what I wanted to do when I was 10 years old. That doesn't mean that it was that easy because then I went on to study psychology, and when it came to picking a degree, there was nothing else I really wanted to do. And so I went and did psychology, but I also was passionate about doing every other job. So I'd take my car to go get service and I'd be like, oh, maybe I could be an electrician. Or, I mean, no, I don't even know what they do, the car people. Anyway. But I was really passionate about so many different things. I'd pick up a camera and go, oh, I want to be a photographer. Oh, I want to be a primary school teacher. And I was flip-flopping throughout my whole study, really. But I'm really glad I stuck with psychology, and it's definitely the right career for me.
It's really good. So this question is always on my mind, and I'm sure I speak for Kathleen as well as the rest of year 12 as well. But I was just wondering how important your ATAR was to getting where you are now. So how important was that in terms of your current career?
It made it easier. So it meant I could go straight into study. But now that I've met a whole bunch of other psychologists and people who are doing what I'm doing, there are so many different paths. And I stressed myself out to the point of when I got to university and had to study, I just didn't want to. So I spent all my spare time at university partying, working, traveling. So it definitely is helpful, and it's a great sense of achievement if you get an ATAR that you're really proud of. But for psychology, it's not the be and end all at all. Yeah.
It's probably the same with the sports industry. It's a lot of experience, I guess. Yeah, as Emma said,
I was lucky enough to get my ATAR for the degree I wanted to do as well. But to get into the industry I wanted to do, I actually did a Bachelor of Business, majored in tourism and events, and now I'm working in the sport industry. So it's not really the degree that I went into. I did quite an open degree, and I guess was great because I could have gone into so many different jobs. But it also, I found it quite difficult when I left uni that there wasn't one straight career path for me. So I guess while you're at uni, just do as much experience as you can. I was doing internships all the time, volunteering all the time in sport. So I knew that was my passion, but I just wanted to finish that degree and then try to get into sport from there. But I guess when I was at school, I did think seriously about the ATAR, but I also had a very balanced life. I was doing sport probably 4 times a week. I was out most weekends at parties, hanging out with friends. Did do study, but I had a very balanced life. So it's really important to have I think, a balanced life and not just purely focus on the study.
Yep, I agree with all of that. So yeah, I definitely think the ATAR does. It's a good benchmark to try and aim for, and even above if you can, to get into the course that you want to do. But I guess, as Emma and Ashley did say, if you don't get the ATAR that you want, you can definitely go to TAFE or do other colleges and other courses that can almost overtake other people who do those university courses. So, yep, you'll find your way, basically.
Thank you so much. As an extension of the question Sarah just asked, this is probably more suitable for year 9 and 10. So, did the subjects or electives you chose at Bennies help to pursue your interests after graduating?
I definitely think so. Yes. So I was quite passionate about biology, not so much chemistry, not so much physics, but chemistry was a subject I did struggle with, and I did really push myself to make it a priority. And it definitely made the transition to university a lot easier. Just understanding some of those really abstract concepts and theories really helps a lot having that previous exposure in high school. So I guess when you are looking at the course that you want to do, there are a lot of subjects that are required or definitely suggested that you do study. So if it is difficult, but it is important, do try and put yourself and your heart into it. It does make the difference. So, yeah.
Thank you. Ashley, do you have any input?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so it probably didn't for me. My favourite subject at school was PDHPE, so that was probably the one that I enjoyed the most. I also did biology and modern history, so it wasn't really just a bit random.
And I think my electives were music and maybe a history subject. And then when it came to subjects for year 12, I did 4 units of English, 3 units of history, mathematics, because with psychology, you need maths. And then religion as well. As for did it help, I definitely think having subjects. The best advice I got was when you're picking subjects is pick things that you're interested in and that will sustain you and your passion and your focus throughout your schooling life, because you won't. Life is full of obligation. If you do subjects that you like, you'll feel happier coming to school and you'll just be a happier person. So yeah.
All right, thank you. So these are now sort of questions about your careers and where you are now and how you got here. So as Jamie said previously, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So would you be able to provide a brief summary on how you got to your career path and like its difficulty? And so because obviously you had like a business degree, for example, and then you got around to sport. So how was that journey for each of you? We'll start with Emma.
So I may have alluded it to before when I said that I got to uni and I wanted to party, work, and travel. So what happens with the psychology degree is you have to get a certain mark and standard of marks. So you have to get distinctions the whole way through if you want to quickly progress to honours and then to masters. And so I was getting, not so great marks, but I was having the best time of my life. And I got the best education traveling, working, meeting people. I signed up for touch football at university. I was spent so many hours sitting on the hill talking to people. And that to me, if you want to become a psychologist, is you need to expose yourself to all walks of life in a safe way. But it was really, I look back now, I did myself a disservice in the short term, but in the long term, it made the person I was. So I guess I didn't get the marks I wanted, to get into honours, which is your the fourth year. So I ended up going and throwing myself into working in pretty crazy situations out in rural New South Wales, and that if I had have got all the marks I needed, I wouldn't have done that. And I reckon that's the part of my career I feel the most proud of working. And then I think that if for anyone who finishes a psychology degree, I have this theory, is you can sit in front of anyone with any problem and you can handle it. So if you can finish a psychology degree, because it is pretty tough, that it sets you up big time. So it was challenging, and I remember there were a lot of tears to start with because I was quite an innocent girl. So when I'd sit in front of kids and hear their problems, I'd go home and want to like crawl up into a little ball and go, "How can life be so hard?" But if you have the right support around you and you believe in yourself, you can get up the next day and you feel stronger and stronger. So it's been a love-hate relationship with the studying and the getting to where I am now, but I wouldn't change any of it as well. Yeah. So don't let it deter you if you think, oh, I won't get the marks or I can't do the study or I can't commit to anything that long, because you can, definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyways.
Do either of you have any input?
Yeah, I can add on to that. I guess the sports industry is quite difficult to get into, and events in general. A great example of mine, I actually got into the sports industry by who I know, and I guess that's an important thing to take away from today. It's all about networking. I was at a house party with an Oak Hill student actually, who was working at Football Federation Australia at the time, and I was just chatting to him about what I was doing after uni, because we did the exact same degree, but he focused on sport, saying that I was struggling to get in because it did take probably 8 or 9 months for me to get into the events industry after I completed my degree. And he got me an interview at Football Federation Australia. So from there, every single job I've had since then, it has been through a contact. So it's so important to keep good relationships with people and, to go out and be social and do that volunteering and just say yes. I say yes to pretty much everything. So that's why I'm here today. It is really important because it will get you through to that next step. You might be applying for a job with 10 other people, the exact same qualifications, and if you have an in with someone else in that company already, it's definitely going to assist you.
Awesome. And Laurie, how did you get the very specific job as a penguin trainer?
Well, to be honest, I actually applied as a bit of a joke. So I saw the ad, and it did have a fair bit of criteria that I didn't feel that I had. One of those being a rescue scuba diver, which does demand quite a bit of physical and mental effort. So I applied for the job because I had worked at Wildlife Sydney Zoo, which is also like a sister company to Sea Life Sydney. And I think basically my really quite diverse career in terms of having volunteered quite a bit with Taronga Zoo, overseas as a field assistant, that sort of thing, all these kind of strange skills set me apart. But I think also based on how I interacted with other people in a group interview that we had set up. And also people that I knew from previous work helped me to land that job. And I sort of smashed out 3 scuba diving courses in winter, which was not a lot of fun, but it was a really good challenge for me, and probably, definitely a highlight having done all of that and being where I am now, playing with penguins most of the time, and having a great job that is very different. Yeah.
Thank you. Laurie and Emma, I understand that you both took part in volunteering. So do you think that volunteering is a good way to further your career?
Absolutely, yes. So I think as frustrating as it is, a university degree is kind of the base level for entering in almost any job. So volunteering and trying to gain skills from jobs that may not always seem related to the field, or anything that's even computer based or technical based. I have a white card working with a friend in construction that I just did between work. And that really does give you an X factor. It gives you an edge over other people. So it's an investment in your career, even though it might seem that you're not really getting paid for it if it's for a couple of months of a year or even more. You can work around it. You can work another job, whether it's retail or something like that. But as long as you're passionate about it and you do see the big picture where you want to go, volunteering is definitely something I can't stress enough to do.
Awesome. Thank you. And Emma?
Times are changing in the job market nowadays. So when you apply for a job out when you become older, is your application will be one of sometimes hundreds or thousands. And what can really differentiate you from the other people who are going for the other applicants is your volunteer work. And also, people want to know about what makes you you. So, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? What do you like to not maybe don't tell them what you do on weekends, but you get what I mean. And so, volunteering is just another piece of the pie that can make you a round, whole, interesting person, but it gives you something to feel proud about as well. A lot of what makes people happy, they've found in the research, is giving back to others, feeling a sense of something bigger than you, and also you tend to find in volunteer work is you meet other like-minded people who you can kind of bounce off and that you can gel with as well. And you just there's this word called nepotism, and nepotism is about it's not what you know, it's who you know. So um, I love what Ash said about I just never say no to these sorts of opportunities. Just keep on saying yes. If it feels right, just keep on saying yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So the sports industry is known to be quite a hard industry to get into. So did you find that there were any particular challenges there were getting into the position where you are now or the positions you've held?
Yeah, so as I said, it did take me probably 9 months to be able to get into the events industry. So between uni and getting into the industry, I was working at Bus About Europe. So I'm sure some of you guys will go on some bus abouts in the next few years. So that was kind of a good bridge for me. It gave me quite a few good admin skills before I did get into the events industry. I was extremely fortunate to kind of get that in. A lot of people that I did degrees with, there were a lot of people that I met at uni in the sports industry and not working in sport at the moment. But as I said, once you get in, it's just building relationships, and that is honestly how I've got every single job I've got so far. So,
Do you think there's an advantage in knowing what you want to do early? So I think, Emma, you said you knew what you wanted to do since age 10, I think it was.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any advantage in knowing what you want to do?
So I knew what I wanted to do when I was 10, but I was also surrounded by, there were 4 family members who were psychologists. So I had that constant exposure. As for it still didn't mean that I didn't toss around a lot and bounce between ideas of could I do this, could I do that, and really play with the ideas. So I think knowing, they say when I was at school in Year 12, they said that we would go through 3 different career changes. So I wonder what it is at for you guys now in terms of how many different career changes. So I would say, yeah, it sort of helps a bit and gives you a bit of direction. But it could also not help because you might say, I want to be this, and then block out other opportunities and not want to listen to advice about what other people think might be great. Or, yeah, it can work both ways.
Does anyone else have any input in terms of that? Idea?
Well, I guess the fact that I did always wanted to get into science did help, but it's definitely also an industry that is changing all the time, and there are new jobs coming up all the time. Especially with social media and Instagram, there are a lot of people even that I work with who have their own Instagram pages, and they've been scouted by TV channels overseas. So kind of like Steve Irwin type personalities, all of that sort of thing is changing in terms of education as well as working with animals or being a vet or something like that. So yeah, I guess my parents didn't work in science. My sister is actually a marine biologist, so I guess the same as Emma, I was lucky to have someone close to me who had a bit of a similar like-minded aspiration for a career. So it does help, but I've also considered other options between jobs, which haven't popped up as quickly as I would have liked. So yeah.
Thank you.
So Obviously, Laurie, since you work with animals, you're a trainer. Do you find that doing shows is very nerve wracking? Like, do you get nervous doing shows?
Yeah. How do you practice with penguins? Like,
Well, I'm pretty lucky. We don't do too many. I don't know if that's on. We don't do too many shows, but I do, I guess, backstage tours with guests. So part of what I do is mostly developing a lot of trust with our animals. Penguins are very sensitive to behaviors and interactions with each other as well as people. Um, and as a bird, they are quite clever and sometimes a bit clever than I would take them for. So I guess in the tours and the interactions that I do with people, I do try and promote a lot about their behavior and what makes them different and also what makes them a lot like us. So I guess it's not so much nerve wracking. I've actually come to really enjoy public speaking and talking to people so long as I know what I'm talking about. That always helps, as I'm sure a lot of you guys think the same. So in preparing, I mean, I try to keep it versatile. So a script can be good, but it can also come across a bit ingenuine. So I read a lot. I try and keep up to date with research and science and ways to communicate well to other people that they can understand some scientific terminology. So it's a lot of fun. It's good fun.
I can imagine it would be a lot of fun.
Do you have any fun penguin
Yeah,
stories?
any funny penguin stories?
I guess to just summarize it, the funniest thing to me is also the most humbling. So the more I see what penguins are like every day, the more I realize they're really not that different to us at all. So I guess we always think of birds and penguins as the ideal in terms of monogamy and having a relationship with each other that like lives on forever, but that's not the case at all. So we definitely have a lot of boy and girl penguins that have their own intentions about meeting certain birds, and they'll definitely be inclined to run away to a corner with someone else. So I think I think that's why we love Love Island so much. It's yeah, you see you see similarities everywhere.
It's almost like Jamie and Luke Parker.
Awesome.
Okay, so Emma, what do you think is the best and worst part in working with children and teenagers?
Again, it comes down to that humbling thing. So I can, do the 6 years of education and know all the scientific terms and be all ready. But then you have a kid who just doesn't want to do anything that you want them to do. And so what do you do then? And I think the best part would be the biggest shock for me in working in private practice. So that's private clients coming to you. I was really stubborn and I said to the lady who owns the practice, I do not want to work with kids under the age of 9. So I'm like, I don't really know how to talk to them. I don't know, like, how do you do therapy with them? And I definitely don't want kids who are naughty. I don't want them. And it turns out that the main kind of kids I'm now getting, the ones that I most love working with, are the really naughty ones. And I just had he just turned 3. He was about to be expelled from his second preschool. But but they are some of the most rewarding because we did some interventions and I went back there the other day and he went from being this, he like literally wore a hoodie and he wouldn't wear shoes and he'd walk around like growling at everyone. And I went there the other day and he came up with this little girl and she had this little jewelry box and he was like helping her go through little bits of jewelry and showing me, and he
That's so
totally
sweet.
changed and transformed. And you think about what could have happened to that kid if he hadn't had that early intervention. And so that's sort of like the cool stuff. The worst part of my job that I have to really monitor is that you hear some of the most tragic stories. And if you have a heart and if you're human, it's really hard to sit and hear some of the stories and to not, well up a little bit. And I guess I feel really privileged, and most every day there's not one day I don't want to go to work, and there's not one client I look at my calendar and say I don't want to see you, because I really treasure what I do. But there's no real worst parts. It's more just, I guess, there's no hiding in your bubble of, the world's a really nice place. There are really hard parts of life. But if you have the mindset of, at least I can do something, then it helps you a lot. So, yeah.
That's really nice. So moving on to Ashley, do you have any interesting stories about athletes when you were working at as a venues operation manager?
So I guess over the last 8 years now, I've worked with quite a lot of athletes. So I was fortunate enough to go to the World Cup in Russia with the Socceroos. So extremely excited about the World Cup starting next week. So I did hang around the team quite a bit. I obviously worked for Sally Fitzgibbon's professional surfer and have worked with quite a lot of elite running athletes as well. So I have been there behind the scenes with them. And yes, I do know quite a lot of stories, but being in my position, it's not stuff that I sort of want to share. I guess one athlete story I do have, which everyone at FFA got quite jealous of when it happened, is I was over in Rio with the team, and Tim Cahill actually started following me on Instagram, and then he started commenting on my stories and some of my posts as well. So everyone back in Australia was quite jealous of that. So that's
really
one
cool.
benefit of the job.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
This is a question for all of you. So, for the students who are interested in working abroad, were there any challenges in working in a different country?
I guess in my experience, I moved to New Zealand for 6 months in 2014. And I went to a tiny little, I guess it's like a little town on the west coast of the South Island called Franz Josef Glacier, which, from what I read, had a population of about 200 people. And
It sounds like our
school,
grade.
that's
yeah,
five
right?
times.
Our grade is
It's
200.
not a
Five times
lot.
our school. Yeah.
And I guess I sort of found the advert on like a community website, and it was just a seasonal job, just for 6 months. Just a few flights over the sea to an English-speaking country. So it wasn't probably the most difficult of places to go to. But once I arrived, I had a little share house with about 4 other people, all working in a different I guess, organisation in New Zealand. And I kind of got there and thought, okay, it's a pretty different sort of situation. It was very quiet. Everybody knew everybody. It was kind of out in the bush. It was very cold as well, very beautiful. But I guess the biggest thing was just starting from scratch. So I didn't know anybody except one of my workmates who picked me up from the airport, and I'd only had about 2 conversations with her over the phone. So I guess, yeah, the biggest challenge is throwing yourself in the deep end, but also you can be almost whoever you want. And I guess it's probably the most, I don't know, the most fulfilling way of testing your boundaries and seeing what you can achieve by putting yourself in a totally different space. So I did take some time to adjust, but a lot of the people that I did live with had moved over from the same sort of background, just to work somewhere different. And we all became very, very close. I spent a lot of time together, and in New Zealand, there's a lot of stuff you can do. So I did bungee jumping, quad biking, horse riding. I climbed a glacier as well. So the benefit of working in a small town is that people know everybody and they all look after you as well. So I got a lot of good benefits too. So yeah, I definitely recommend it, and it also looks great on your resume.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. Ashley, did you work overseas as well?
Yeah, no, I worked over in Rio. So I guess going over with the team, language was probably the biggest issue that we encompassed. So we had Portuguese lessons about 12 weeks before we got over there, which definitely assisted. But yeah, I'm definitely not fluent. So that was probably the biggest challenge I had over there. Working at Football Federation Australia, being part of the Asian Confederation, we also had a lot of Middle Eastern countries and Asian countries coming to Australia. So it was just working with a lot of different cultures and not a lot of women in that field either. So it was quite difficult to start. It's obviously changing now, but yeah, it's something that I had to grow accustomed to, I guess.
All right. So I think we'll move to some of our last questions. So what advice do you have for any students that are wishing to pursue, the career that you guys might be in? Emma?
Don't get deterred by how much study you have to do and that you have to do maths. Don't ever doubt that you can't handle it because you can. I had my mum try and say, no, you can't handle it, do speech pathology, but just through exposure you can do it. And it's a kind of job where you can make it and you can recreate it all the time. So at the moment I'm doing one part, but I know that there are so many other parts that I want to delve into with psychology. So in terms of a job that leaves you this abundance of possibility, and you get to like hear everyone's secrets. So it's really good. Yeah, no, I love my job and I really recommend it.
Ashley? I guess with mine, it's just keeping those connections, doing as many internships as you can, volunteering as much as you can. But once you do get into the industry, it's not the most glamorous industry. You get a lot of perks and it's extremely rewarding, but you do need to put in the hours. I've done weeks where I've done 70 to 80 hours for over a year, and you do get really tired. So once you get in, make sure you get a good life balance, which I'm still working on.
I guess considering all those really good points, surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded and who, I guess, push you and have the best intentions for what you want to be doing. That's the best, I guess, the best start. For my industry, I do feel that it's especially hard here in Sydney. So to be working with penguins in the city is great. It's definitely not something a lot of people are lucky to land without a couple of years of lots of hard work, lots of interviews, lots of volunteering as well. I have friends who've worked at zoos unpaid for 5 or more years, just trying to get their foot in the door. So volunteering is great. There are a lot of other things you can do as well. You can join Facebook groups. You can join just things on the weekends like cleanups, bush regeneration, that sort of thing. Even things that don't really seem related. So just picking up skills wherever you can, if it's with computers or something as different as that, because it can all work in your favour. And just stay passionate, stay interested, and stay curious. So keep reading, and really, I guess, use the internet as much as possible. There's so many things that I've discovered in the last few years that keep popping up, and also don't limit yourself to Australia. You can definitely look at things overseas, and people are speaking English more and more everywhere. So there's a good little comfort network that can support you.
Thank you so much for all your input. It was really insightful. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of Sarah, we've both learned a lot. We'd now like to open the questions up to you guys. So I think we have some microphones roaming around. If any of you have a question, 2 questions? Okay, we'll have 2 questions. Are there mics? Okay. Awesome. So, any questions? No? Can you see? Okay, I think there's a question at the very back.
Okay. For the girl that works in the zoo, sorry, I don't know your name. You said that you gave tours to a lot of people. Did you do it for, do you do like a lot of schools?
Q4, please bring a penguin to
Please
Bennies.
come back.
Yeah.
We don't really deal a lot with. Ooh, what's that? We don't really deal a lot with schools, unfortunately. But in my previous role at Wildlife Sydney Zoo, we did get a lot of schools coming through. So sometimes we have little reptiles and that sort of thing. But we're definitely looking at doing some volunteer programs. So I'm not really sure how early we'll start that. Maybe even year 10. Definitely try and get onto our volunteer coordinator, because there's definitely a lot of other work that we can get other people involved with outside of working with the penguins, or even leading up to some work experience too. So awesome.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Okay.
Hi, this is Emma. How did you get your opportunity in rural New South Wales, and what was that experience like?
So that word nepotism of it's not what you know, it's who you know. So one of the psychologists in my family knew this lady who was going out, and she would spend 3 months of the year traveling around with 2 week stints. And have we got a minute? Yeah. The first ever trip I did out there, we were in Wilcannia, 12 hours from nowhere. The lady I worked with, she didn't like to fly, so we drove there. And we had to have walkie talkies under our pillows at night time because there'd been 6 deaths in the community, and there's 1,200 people, and only one was a natural death. And when the Indigenous in that community grieve, they drink and they stop working for a week. So it'd been 6 weeks of drinking and whatnot. And so that's when you really know you're alive, when you're sleeping with the walkie-talkie under your pillow, with your wardrobe up against the door. But I felt really safe, and I guess some of the best experience I got was working out there, because I think that Australia is a really big place and we know a really small part of it. And we can look overseas, we can look to help people overseas, but just look over in our own backyard. I can talk more to you about that later if you want.
So, can we please have a round of applause for our guest speakers? So, thank you all so much for your valuable insight into what life is like beyond Bennies. Yeah.
We'd also like to extend a big thank you to Mrs. Gray and Mrs. Blackman for all their hard work, as well as to Mr. Duncan and Miss Sheen and the rest of the communications portfolio up there. So thank you.
We'd like to invite Melanie Drayden, the president of MS Visa, to come to the stage to thank our special guests.
Hi, everybody. Emma, Laurie, and Ashley, on behalf of the wider school community, thank you so much for speaking so eloquently, interestingly, and honestly to us all this afternoon at the Beyond Bennies Assembly. I think the messages that you gave about perseverance, about work-life balance, and about the importance of relationships are really important, something that we can all take away. So we'd like to present you with a token of our appreciation for coming this afternoon. We wish you all the best in your future careers, and join me again in thanking our speakers.
And I think it might be appropriate to extend our thanks to Kathleen and Sarah for being such wonderful hosts. Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to hear about the opportunities available to us in the future, but I am very excited now to welcome Year 12 student Hania Ebrahimi to the lectern. She's going to talk about an opportunity that she's seized during her time here. So let's make her feel welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just like Jamie said, my name is Honey, and I'm actually so excited to be here right now. But it is my first time talking at a whole school assembly, so please excuse me if I stumble or pronounce things not so right. After listening to our wonderful XU12s and the stories after high school, I'm here to share something I did during my first week of 1 and 2 holidays as a year 12. For the first 5 days of the holidays, I woke up at 7 a.m. every morning when many of my other peers were still tucked in bed. I traveled to the city on my own with trains and buses and back home the same way. I got to spend a week experiencing work at one of the coolest, largest, and most professional head offices of Australia. I went to Westpac at Barangaroo, And I have a few slides that Rising of this all goes back to an email that seniors received from Mrs. Elgood, term 3 last year. The email was about an engineering camp at UNSW during Christmas holidays. Knowing that I wanted to pursue a career in engineering, I thought it'd be an awesome experience to go to the camp. Um, so we went to the camp, and on the last night, UNSW had organized a networking night for us where engineers from engineering companies came and talked to us and about the roles and different opportunities out there. At this networking night, I met a very lovely lady, Anna, who was a civil engineer at Westpac. Now, I say civil engineer at Westpac, and it makes so much sense to me right now that civil, mechanical, chemical, electrical, software engineers can actually work at a bank head office. But back then, I had no single bank and the construction side had some sort of connection with each other. I only began to realize that I was going to a bank head office after Anna had forwarded my email to another lovely member of Westpac. And about 2 weeks before term 1 and 2 holidays, Jimmy told me the dress code and the address. And just then I realized that I was actually going to be safe. Um, I told my dad thought that I was going to a construction site. He was actually so terrified. And on Monday morning, when he saw me wearing heels, he was so terrified. Um, apart from all the cool stuff like wearing professional office clothing and walking in heels for a whole week, the experience that I got was actually priceless. Not only didn't the bank ask me to pay for my reserved spot for a work experience or anything like that, they actually welcomed me with amazing smiles. They were really happy and excited to show me around. Sally and Danielle, who were the executive and executive assistants of Westpac, were more than delighted that a high school student had emailed them and so confidently asked for a week of work experience. When we're at school, we're always so scared that we're going to be rejected or that it's too much for a bank head office to accept us for a week of work experience. But the people out there are so amazed by young people who are so passionate and motivated to find out about their future. Now, I say work experience, but I don't mean being given a laptop and some tasks to do. Danielle actually took the time off her work and showed me around the head office throughout the whole week. On Monday, she introduced me to a few of her colleagues who told me about the roles at Westpac. On Tuesday, I was specifically taken to the engineering side of Westpac and saw all the software engineering of making the net banking and the awesome app. And on Wednesday, I was taken to a different head office of Westpac, which is at Kogarah, and I was shown their main data center, which was really cool for me. And it was actually really freezing in there too. um, on Thursday, I went to a few business meetings with the different departments, so got to see the business side of the bank as well. I used to sit down at these meetings and just wonder to myself, like, what's going on? Because, like, there's so many different abbreviations that they use, and, like, you don't really understand what's going on unless you know the whole concept about it. But it's just really amazing to just sit in their meetings and listen to them talk about their jobs. I find that really amazing. The whole week also, I got to spend my lunchtime, which was about an hour, at Sydney Harbour, and honestly, it was really beautiful experience. Not only the work experience gave me a taste of what a workplace actually feels like, since I've never even had a part-time job, but it also gave me a taste of all the different opportunities and roles out there. I mean, who knew a bank head office needed a 24/7 electrician, right? As a side note, you also get to see things that not everyday people get to see. For example, I was taken to Westpac's data center at Kogarah, like I said earlier, and got to see the architecture and really cool data centers that they have there. I also got to see their ATM rooms and saw something that really, really blew my mind. Like this ATM here, on the side of it, you see the telephone, and it's only recently manufactured, so they haven't provided it out to bank branches yet. But this is for rural areas, and Westpac manufactured this so they could send it to rural areas and like people not having access to a bank within a few kilometers. They could literally just go to this ATM and call the Westpac a branch through the main screen and like video call them so they could get their things done like just at the ATM. I found that really awesome. On the next slide, There's the contact details of myself and Danielle, who I spent the whole week with. You're more than welcome to email me or Danielle if you wanted to go for a work experience at Westpac. The people there will be more amazed to see more of us young women putting in the effort to getting an insight of our futures. So my point is, and this is especially to our wonderful year 10s, 11s, and 12s, to just give things a go. It is quite hard for me to stand here right now and share my experience with you. Because believe it or not, it is quite scary standing in a hall full of people and just talking. I honestly don't know how our captains do that so confidently at every assembly. Anyways, so if there's an opportunity that Mrs. Elgood emails you and you find it interesting, just give it a go. What do you have to lose, right? Not only you meet amazing people that you could have great connections and networking with for after high school, but you get to have some cool experience that not all your peers get. You never know, maybe you'll end up finding out that certain role you were looking for wasn't actually the thing for you, but something that else that you'd never even considered before was just the thing for you. So just give things a go and have some awesome experience. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Honeyette. We would now like to invite our guest speakers, the executive team, Melanie, the communication portfolio, and other guests in the audience to proceed to the Hildegard deck. Otherwise, you girls are all good to go. Thank you.
Please stack your chairs in 4 if possible.
Listen and attend with me.